major issues that the rating agencies keep an eye on. One has to do with the fiscal matrix, and that's the health of the state finances, and that's not doing well. And that simply means that we have to spend less. That's as easy as that. We have to do something to improve labor legislation and labor relations in South Africa. And that, again, is a political question. But I guess more importantly, has to do with political stability, clarity on policy, and there's some major issues around that as well. So there are a number of issues that we can address, but I guess we have to start off with political stability.
Well, for some more analysis on this, joining me now in studio is economist Francois Stofberg. Francois, it was good having you in studio again. Explain to us why they're the most important. We've said in our intro that S&P are one of the most important rating agencies. Why is that?
Well, they've got the long track record. They've got the big name, specifically in the US. I'm aware of a lot of capital does flow from. They are the big agency. They're the big five in South Africa's term. They're the big bank in Africa, or the big. What I'm trying to say is they're the big name. They're the guys that have been around. They're the guys that everybody runs to first. They're the guys that we talk about, the S&P 500, the big index in the US. So the Standard & Poor's name and their credit agency really is they're the go-to guys. Specifically concerning American markets as well. European markets tend to lean against Moody's a bit more, not a bit more, but more so than they do in the US. So I think that the name that they've carried with them makes them their important guys.
But I guess the concern is, out of all the ratings agencies, they rate us the worst, so to speak.
Yes. They're the aggressors. They're the guys that tend to not jump the boat first, but they see something coming a while earlier. And usually then, because they have so much expectations on them, they'd rather be safe and downgrade you first before they realize afterwards, and their investors come knocking and say, but hey, you said these guys are investment grade and they're not. So they have a very big reputation to protect. So I think in that sense, they usually tend to be the first guys, as I say, the aggressors when it comes to credit rating.
I know all you economists are betting guys. That's basically what you do for a living. Your prediction for today, just on the back of Friday's announcements from the other ratings agencies, what are you predicting for today?
Well, I think there's always a chance that they will downgrade us to sub-investment grade or junk bond status, but I think it's low. 30%, 40%, I would say max. Reasons they'll cite more or less the same reasons. It's very difficult to discern the health of your economy if you have all these external factors having an influence on that. I'm not saying external factors are the main reason why we are where we are, not at all, but I say it's difficult if you have a 2-season drought to really discern the health of an economy. It's difficult if you have this political turmoil, also cited by Moody's and Fitch as one of their major concerns. If you have all this political turmoil, what is really going on in the economy? If that were to stabilize, and now in the next couple of years, will that have a substantial impact on our GDP growth? And then, because that's the main thing, are we going to have growth? So that's, we're going to keep on talking about that. So all these external factors really weighing down on their economy. They believe it has been so. So if we can avoid these external factors, how does South Africa's economy look then? That's why they're going to give us a little bit more breathing room, probably 6 months.
Let's talk about that political instability. Yes. I know you're not a politician and you try and stay away from it, but the reality is that decisions like charging the finance minister with fraud and corruption, that's been cleared now in the last couple of weeks. Will they be looking at things like that? The Treasury, those fraud charges, the SAA's situation, they look closely at those things.
Now, politics and economics very close correlated. The reason being because politics and more so policy dictates economics. So it's very difficult in an environment like we are in South Africa currently, because we have political uncertainty, means policy uncertainty, means economic uncertainty. And that's everything an investor doesn't want. You don't want economic uncertainty. You want to know, here's the funds that we have, this is what we are going to use it for, this is how we're going to grow the economy, this is how we're going to create jobs, and that is how we're going to reduce social unrest in South Africa. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear the whole picture, they want to see the clear plan, and they want to see it implemented. So it's tough now because we have all this uncertainty, and it's brewing and it's boiling, and every time a new announcement is made, and then all the different heads of faculties everywhere, they come and they want to reinstill some confidence, but then we have another outbreak. We have this another outlier movement that skews the movement and the stability that we usually had. So policy uncertainty, political uncertainty, really hurting us currently in South Africa. And the problem with that is that all these short-term shocks lead to, as I've said, longer-term fundamental changes. And that's why we now have a fundamentally weaker economy and a fundamentally weaker currency.
My last doom and gloom question.
Yes.
I mean, let's say you're saying 30, 40%.
No.
That's still quite a big chance that it could be downgraded. What are the impacts of that happening?
Well, if it does happen, it means that current debt isn't really more expensive. It's all the new debt that we have to go on to service our very high debt levels. So we have seen debt grow, but it's not an exponential growth that like we've seen in many other countries. South Africa's debt was 46%, then it crept up to 47% 2 years ago, then 48%, then 50%, and now we're probably going to reach 52% beginning mid of next year. So this is a stable, slow increase that we've seen in debt levels, and all this new debt will now be more expensive. And the other major concern is all these big fund managers, they have an investment pool where they take all the bonds from different emerging economies. They use Nigeria's, they use Turkey's, they use South Africa's bonds, but they're only allowed to use those bonds for you to invest in if they have investment grade. Remember, you don't really want someone to default on your investment money. You don't want to hear, I've invested in African Bank and now, oh well, that's gone now, so I've lost 5% of my portfolio. So that's where the risk is really going to come in, is that these entities and these large investment firms won't be able to hold South Africa's bond if they are sub-investment grade, and that's not going to be good for investments in South Africa.
On the flip side, a positive thing, I mean, some growth in the second quarter of this year. I mean, that's a positive and should, be a fairly substantial a talking point when it comes to these decisions.
Definitely. I think it did bode well with conversations. Unfortunately, I think the consensus is now that we aren't yet at the bottom point. So we had this flicker of hope, which is nice, but fundamentally, as I explained, we are now weaker. And that we've seen in the figures since 2009, we've had this slow but steady decrease in economic performance, and the rest of the world know that. South Africans, we want to try and avoid the topic, but it does seem that we've gone in this slower trajectory, so it's easier to have that little flicker, but unfortunately, I don't see the economy really outperforming 0.3, 0.5% this year. And then going forward, we're going to remain in this slow, sluggish slump, which is not good news, specifically for these credit agencies.
Sure. Anyway, I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to take it that you said that there won't be a credit downgrade, and that's the good news, hopefully. Francois, thanks very much. It was good chatting to you. Francois Stofberg there, an economist, just dumbing it down for us who don't understand all of this complicated stuff with regards to the S&P ratings agency. They'll be making their ruling later on today. We'll keep you up to date as and when all that news comes in. Let's move on to